Throw out the leadership playbook that got you to the top. The way we work has shifted, compelling us to change how we lead. Uncertainty and ambiguity can lead us to believe that telling folks what to do is strong leadership, especially if that's how you came up. But future agile workplaces and teams require a different way of leading. Being overzealous about command and control will cost you.
So how you were managed and led as you were coming through the organization is not how you're going to manage and lead if you're going to be effective today. Whether that's fair, you like it, you don't like it, I don't care. It's a new world order.
That's my guest today, Dr. Wanda Wallace, executive coach, managing partner of Leadership Forum, and author of You Can't Know It All, and host of the long-running and fantastic podcast, Out of the Comfort Zone. She spent decades helping senior leaders navigate shifts. In this episode, we get very specific about the megaSHIFTs reshaping today's workplaces and the leadership responses they require.
Do I control in a way that feels punitive? Or do I control in a way that feels informative? Or do I control in a way that feels like growth? Or do I control in a way that people feel protected, secured, covered?
This episode will help you figure out an approach to leadership that is effective, adaptable, and more human. We will explain how to engage your team and identify where you provide the most value. Change can work for you rather than against you. It just requires an honest look at your leadership habits, what's working and what isn't. I'm Dr. Cindy Pace, and this is The Shift Forward. Don't forget to stay tuned at the end for my final thoughts on leadership as a megaSHIFT. Let's dive in. So kicking off our conversation, what is the difference between leadership and leader? Because we use those terms back and forth. I want to ground our conversation in that. What are your thoughts?
Okay, I'm going to say a radical thing first.
Okay.
And then I'm going to quote one of my favorite people on this one.
Okay.
So when you think what it means to leading, ultimately, what it means is I'm trying to influence somebody to do something that I think is worth doing. Hopefully for the greater good, for some better results, for a positive outcome, for moving us forward as an organization. So it's ultimately trying to influence. What that means then is that anybody at any level in the organization is leading in some ways. Even as a junior person, I'm leading my boss to experiment in something that they're not necessarily comfortable with. I'm leading my peers to adopt a new strategy, a new approach. So I think leadership is ultimately about influence, all right? And that takes us away from an old distinction that I have hated for years called managing versus leading, right? I know that it's useful for some people on some occasions, but I dislike it. And I dislike it for exactly the reasons Henry Mintzberg said. Who wants to be led by somebody who can't manage? And worse yet, who wants to be managed by somebody who can't lead? So they're merged together. Your greatest tactics for influencing, for leading, are really your management skills. So why are we making this arbitrary distinction? I need both. And you can't sit in the middle of the organization and have no vision of where we're going anymore. That's a megaSHIFT. That's over. You gotta have a sense of what are we trying to accomplish, or you're not influencing in an effective way. So that's what I think I mean by leading.
So these are some interesting and different definitions than, what I've heard. And I love having conversation because this is how we expand our perspective. I always thought that there was like this magic moment Now, this is what I initially thought before I knew better. But there was this magic moment that you're no longer just managing, that you're leading, you're setting the vision, you're inspiring, and you're motivating people towards this shared goal. And what I have learned about leading people is they choose you, to what you said. You don't always get to choose your people. Sometimes you do, but it's still mutual. It's not I choose you to be on my team, so play the way I want you to play.
Yeah.
There is a mutual, a shared understanding. And I think that's one piece. The other piece is, to your point, you can't be an effective leader if you can't effectively manage the work.
Right.
The work that's happening. And we hear a lot of different things from people about what they may think leadership is. I hear a lot of leaders move barriers out the way. Now, I will tell you this. Sometimes you do. And sometimes you calculate how we're going to get around this barrier because you might not have the power to move it. You might have to think of another way. You also may not be able to anticipate all of the things that's going to happen. But one of the things that I started to see start in terms of this shift in leadership and the way that we talk about leadership, leaders, managers, is that people are looking for folks that are going to be in it with them.
Yep.
There's no longer this, I'm at my desk and you're out there you're out there doing the thing. And you just come to me when you need coaching. I found that in my past several years as a people leader, that I was in the trenches, that I was doing similar things that my team was doing. And maybe some people would say, why were you doing that? But I think there was a need for me to understand the work better. I don't think you can know everything, but I need to know enough of what my people need so that I can advocate.
I think that's true. And it's one of the reasons that I've been trying for the last several years to kill the term general management. Because the notion of general management is that I sit above everybody else and just pull the strings on how they all do their work. No, that isn't going to work. You have to have some knowledge of what your team is doing and sometimes the ability to take a deep dive down. What you don't want to do is to get stuck down there because then you're not adding your greatest value. So there are those moments that you've got to dive, and then the question is, how quickly can you pop back up? But one of the things I think you have to do as a leader these days is to be, one of my core messages is to be crystal clear about where you're adding the greatest value so that you're not spending all the time on the things that are comfortable to you, that boost your confidence, that you know how to do. You're spending time on the things that add value to the team. And sometimes that's a deep dive.
I'm thinking when you say deep dive, maybe it's because I can't wait to get back to one of my favorite places that I spend time in the summer. But I love to watch the osprey go in for the dive and how they're perched up very high and have that laser focus into the water in terms of where they're going to go get the food. And they come right out. They don't sit there and say, hey, I'm going to do the backstroke and then I'll come out, right?
Yeah.
They go in and come right out. And so I love this idea of being focused, knowing when you need to go in and do the deep dive and coming out. I'll share with you one of the things that happened to me as a people leader in this past year or so is, and you talk a lot about this, is being able to get out of my comfort zone. I was responsible for, with the team, implementing a new technology. Now, I wouldn't call myself a tech leader. I love to play in the areas of course, culture and leadership. But this required me to broaden my aperture and really expand my acumen around technology, which meant I had to ask a lot of questions. I had to spend a lot of time talking to the tech rollout team. What does this mean? What would happen if we don't do this? And then also ask my team, where do you need me? If I don't need to sit on these calls where we're going through all of these details, let me know. But I also realize sometimes it's the presence of you that's helpful. It's not that I need to say anything or do anything. It's also that I need to observe, how is my team leading?
Right.
How are they dealing with the change? But I realized as I was talking to some of my colleagues, so many of us were going through this shift of having to lead change from a technological perspective. And so I would love for you to talk a little bit about what are you seeing in terms of this arena? Because we talk about leading change all the time, but it's something about change and technology that has really ramped up over the past several years.
It's not just change. Well, change in technology, and I think we're just at the beginning of the curve. I don't think we've even
haven't seen it.
what this is going to be. Like, it's coming at a much faster pace, I think, and in scarier ways. I also think not because people's job security, as much as because of the implications of what it's going to do for our work, for our security, for a whole bunch of stuff. But so let's start back. If you're not leading change, I don't know what you're doing as a leader.
Ooh, I like that. If you're not leading change, what are you doing?
It's status quo. What's the point? Do we really need somebody to oversee status quo? Seriously?
Say more about that. Status quo is what? You're coming in, you're doing what you've always done and expecting.
Do what you've always done.
Okay.
The team is doing what they've always done, what they already know how to do. I mean, what's your job as a leader then? Yes, you have some oversight of the team. Yes, you have some meetings that you go to. Yes, you have some verification that the team is doing. You go through the performance cycle, but you're just checking boxes. Maybe you're coaching your team in a good way. Maybe you're helping them develop their careers. But that's not what we're looking for today from leaders. We're looking for the best possible results, the least amount of time, the greatest acceptance. That's called making change. So I don't know that you can lead and lead well without making change, especially today, given pace of everything that's happening.
It's a lot of things. Exactly. Change is everywhere.
Yeah. And we won't go down that one. It's just reality. So yeah, I think leadership is about leading change.
We can't lead the way we've been leading. I'm not saying leadership is a megaSHIFT for the sake of a soundbite. I'm saying it because the old way of leadership no longer works. We need a shift from command and control to something else. Wanda and I are going to share that something else.
Okay, so Cindy, I want to take that notion of command and control because I'm sure everybody listening to that knows that they shouldn't do command and control. Command and control is bad, right? Except we know command is bad because you don't get acceptance when you're commanding. The only time you get away with command is when you're in absolute crisis and people are like, tell me what to do and let's go. But that's not day in and day out. The issue is we still have to exercise control. I need to know that my people are on track, that they're doing what they said they do, they're hitting milestones. I need to know where the obstacles are. So I have to have some degree of control to manage the risk, to manage the errors, and to manage the pace of the work. The question is, how do I control? Do I control in a way that feels punitive? Or do I control in a way that feels informative? Or do I control in a way that feels like growth? Or do I control in a way that people feel protected, secured, covered? So the control is there. It's just drop the command part.
Wanda, what I was thinking about when you were talking is this idea of it's a leadership style. So I'm thinking more of someone that's highly directive, a high on the tells, to your point, high on the command. I'm telling you what to do. As you were talking, I was like, oh, that's an interesting aha, is that you can control, but have a style in a way that does not feel
Controlling.
like you are controlling.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we're saying is going from being commanding and controlling to having people feel like, first of all, they have a say in whatever the change is or whatever, that they have a say in the leadership, that there is participatory leadership. There is collaborative leadership coming from your team. It's not a top-down thing. That's an aha. As you were talking, I was like, okay, I see.
Yeah. We control by putting boundary conditions on our team, by saying you can't go outside these bounds, this budget, this time frame, this, approval. These kind of things have to come back to me before you take another step. We control by knowing what the milestones are and checking in at those milestones and saying, well, what's the progress? Where do you need my help? What are you doing? And we control we steer, in effect, by asking really good questions that get people to think for themselves. So it's a shift in how we control. I think a lot of people do command not because they like to dictate. They do command because they think they're instructing. And it's the least effective way to instruct known to man because nobody remembers it. They don't like to follow it. They, kind of half do what you said. It just doesn't work.
Yeah, it's like a constant cycle. So in terms, so we're clear on that's a place that we may feel comfortable because it may make us feel a little bit more powerful, like we're on top of things. Mm-hmm. But what I really want to talk about is the shift that we need to make for where we are and where we're going. And you mentioned that change, it's rapid. Like we're only at the front end of what we're going to see. And so then what does that require from us as this rapid change is disrupting the workplace?
All right. So the first thing is to getting crystal clear about how you are adding value to your team and to your organization. So things like, am I bringing perspective? Am I bringing representation for the group? Am I bringing resources to the group? Am I giving the group direction? Am I setting priorities? Am I helping them with their career? I'm giving them feedback. I mean, what is it that I'm doing for my group that's going to help, that's add the greatest value? So that's the step one. Mm-hmm. Can't answer that. Nothing else I say will matter. All right. The second part is it is a new world order in how you lead. So how you were managed and led as you were coming through the organization is not how you're going to manage and lead if you're going to be effective today. Whether that's fair, you like it, you don't like it, I don't care. It's a new world order. So my advice is get over it. Let's get on with it. So let's admit that as leaders, what we want from our team is engagement, commitment, innovation, collaboration, accepting feedback, taking ownership, delivering great results, being motivated, being inspired. Okay? I can't get that as a leader without doing 3 things that are essential and that are new. Number 1, if I don't care about you, Cindy, as a human being, as a whole human being, not just your work product, then you're not going to give me that motivation or engagement or extra time.
Right. Be interested. And I actually think to what you're saying and what I've experienced as a people leader, they can suss out.
Oh, yeah.
Really quickly, if you read some book over the weekend that said, ask these 3 questions, and if it's not real, people are looking for someone who cares about me.
Yes.
Cares, like you're saying, do you know the position that I play? Do you know when I play? Do you know how we've been doing? What has our performance been if I'm on a sports team? And really carving out that time to know this information. Show me that you care about me. I want to work for someone that truly cares about me, not just about how well I'm performing and turning out work, but cares about me as a human being.
Yep.
Right? So requirement,
because I can't get past to go without that requirement. And that is radically new. And a lot of people are uncomfortable with it because it's not how they were brought up. I don't care. It's new.
How do we get over that? So before we go on to the second, I'm radically uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. You talk to us all the time. How do we get out of our comfort zone of how we've done things and say, hey, it's a new day. My people need to know that I care about them. Do I take an empathy class? What am I supposed to do?
All right.
What am I supposed to be doing?
The simple thing I say is make a list of everybody that's working for you. And maybe it's, today who's working for whom is a little bit of a loose. So, you may have your 7 or 8 direct reports and you may have 3 or 4 others that are working closely with you. So make a spreadsheet. Tell me one thing about what that person cares about outside of work. Just one thing.
And this takes time. So this means that this can't be a drive-by question in your one-on-one or your check-ins. This means that your check-ins are just about that. Like, you have to really carve the time out. This is not going to happen with a questionnaire.
No, it's not a questionnaire.
Because we have some people that, let's send out a questionnaire. Everybody answer this, get it back to me. We'll run a data analysis and see where everyone falls.
But when somebody joins your team, it's a natural moment to take 15 minutes and talk about it. And if you haven't talked about your team, it's like, okay, I realize I don't know much about what you do outside of work. So, like, what's kind of important to you? Just ask the question and listen. 15 minutes, Cindy. And then you get the 5-minute conversation Monday morning, Tuesday morning, whatever it is. So how did that game go?
Yeah.
Or did you make it to the concert? Was it great? How good was it on a 10-point scale? Or, some version of that. Just chat. Okay? All right. So that's step number 1. Step number 2, this is a radically different thing. People want fairness. Okay? And they are harsh critics about unfair treatment. And here's what's radical. It's not just that I want you to be fair to me. I want you to be fair to everybody around me that I see. And so when I hear that rumor about something somebody did that I think is unfair, no. Answer that for me. What's going on? What are we going to do? How are we going to change it? Which means I have to be more transparent as a leader than I have ever done before. We often think people don't need to know. They don't need to know what's going, blah, blah, blah. Let me give you an example. I remember once when I was leading a larger team, I had to encourage somebody to exit when they didn't want to exit. You know the strategy. We did an amicable separation, but it was a push separation. Everybody on my entire staff was panicked about this. What does that mean? Are you doing this to anybody else? Blah, blah, blah. And what I said to them is, I promise you one thing, that if I'm dissatisfied with your performance, you will be hearing from me in advance so you have a chance to correct it. So, have any of you heard from me about something about your performance? No. All right, great. Then you don't need to be worried. But I'm also not going to tell you what I have said to individuals about their performance because that's not fair. You wouldn't want me to do that. So it's just that transparency that I promise not to surprise you.
Okay, so there's 2 different things here, and this is really insightful. One, in a previous episode that people will get a chance to see on trust, we talked about to build trust, transparency is part of that.
Yes.
Fairness, what's interesting to me about fairness is very personal.
That's right.
And it has a personal definition. And so what you think is fair, and it's tied to people's values, what you think may be fair, I might not see it eye to eye. And so fairness in teams really has to be discussed and negotiated. Because to your point, that can be, talk about an elephant in the room. If that is not addressed and people feel like there's some fairness issues, or you're treating one group one way, or we're saying one thing and doing another, if that's not quickly addressed, that also erodes trust. Because if I don't think you're fair, I don't trust you. But we need to understand what is trust on this team, what is fairness, and what does it look like, and what are we expecting? So it sounds like we got a lot of work to do. We've got to know our people, care about them, and now we've got to be transparent, and we have to understand what fairness is. How do you do that? That's not easy.
Well, you've got to keep a dialogue open, because one of the other problems with fairness is somebody somewhere in the organization is going to do something that, you don't necessarily agree with or like, and it's not it's somebody over there. You don't control what they do or how they do. And those rumors spread like wildfire, and they're not always accurately spread either. So, half the story is told, not the full story. And you have to be prepared to deal with that with your people. And that doesn't mean throw a colleague under the bus and say they're an idiot or any other variation on that theme. It means to have an open dialogue. And if people believe I genuinely care about them, I've got a chance to have that open dialogue.
I like the open dialogue. One of the things that I used to do with the team is, when people hear this, they may have a different understanding, but I would say, what are you hearing?
Yeah.
Because one thing I realized is, of course, depending on where you are in the organization, you're going to meetings, you're hearing things. It may not be the same thing that your team is hearing. And then people that are actually doing the day-to-day, the work, or having the change impact them, whatever's happening, they're having a very different experience than someone who is directing or leading the change. And so I would say, what are you hearing? Do people even care about this? Mm-hmm. Do they like what we're doing? How can we find out? And what I started to notice becoming more important was the voice of our colleagues. Really, and not the formal, let's send out like surveys are great. I'm not here to down surveys. I think surveys can give you insights, but they are a moment in time. Mm-hmm. How can we continue to have like ongoing tea chats, coffee chats, meetups where I'm getting a pulse of what people really think? Because if I'm supposed to be a steward for employee engagement, I need to know what makes people engage and what do people need in terms of engagement now, because it may not be consistent, right?
That's right.
And we know that there's always, Gallup has done some amazing work. Gallup always comes out with a report that lets us know there is a huge gap and we're seeing a deterioration in engagement. And it sounds like what you're recommending, Wanda, and I know we have one more to go, can help us rebuild engagement stronger.
Right. I think engagement, the kind that matters, happens at the microculture level.
Absolutely.
It happens at the local manager level, and maybe it's a group of 100, maybe 200 people, but that's the microculture. And that's a part where you can know the people, you can be available to the people, you can start to have some fairness dialogues, you can have that kind of openness. That stuff can get taken care of at that microculture level. Mm-hmm. It's impossible to do that across, 150 different offices in 120 countries, whatever the place is for most people. So caring is mandatory. Fairness is next mandatory. And then here's the secret sauce, I believe, on top of it. And I don't know what's the right word here for it, but people want to be involved. They want to be included. They want to have a voice. Mm-hmm. So the single most important thing to do as a leader is to ask the question and then listen and don't dismiss. If you're not asking questions and then listening and then following that up with another question, then you are not going to get what people are really truly thinking. They're not going to think they have a voice. You don't know what's working, what's not working, where they are. There's no dialogue because you're just saying it's from me to your ears. Get on with it. You got to create that dialogue, and it starts with you asking the question. And I think, even if you think what somebody is saying to you is wrong and you're not going to do it, would you please just ask 2 more questions about it?
Just follow up, because we hear as we are. Mm-hmm. We hear as we are. So you may have said it a different way, but I heard it from my own life experiences. Yep. So it's filtered. I might not have even received it the way that you said it. So the following up and the asking more questions is important because it opens up for greater understanding of what the person is saying. Creating space where people are involved, not just collaborating, but having voice, having agency, and it builds confidence.
Yes. And it's where people learn.
There you go.
It's where they get excited. And then I've got a fair environment and open dialogue. Somebody really cares about me. And oh my gosh, my opinion matters. And I have a chance to grow and learn. Check. Sign me up. I'm staying here. This is like that's it.
I love that. Check. Sign me up. I'm I'm joining the organization. I read something, this was some years ago, around doing a check-in on, hey, is this where I want to be? Is this the organization that I want to be a part of? Those are the moments where people say yes.
Yeah, that's right.
This is what I wanted to do. So those three, you set those up nicely, Wanda, leads me into going into one of the final phases of our conversation here, which is this shift to being more human-centered. Everything that you said to me sounds like the recipe for being human-centered. One of the ahas that I got from a recent report, again, it's a Gallup report on leadership, said that the number one thing that people were looking for is hope.
Yeah.
It's hope. And so I think the things that you talked about are recipes for building that.
Well, okay, so in the resilience literature, we've defined hope in a very specific way. And I think it's an important quality.
Okay.
And it says, it's not that I hope tomorrow is going to be perfect and all of our problems are going to go away. It doesn't build resilience. What hope looks like is, I believe it will get better in some capacity, and I have a next step to take. That next step gives me the agency. And that belief that it will get better, it may be rocky, it may be twisty, it may not be linear, okay, but I believe it will get better somewhere down the line. And I know what to do next. That's where hope comes from. And isn't that what we've been talking about here?
That's it. That's what we've been talking about. I like that it's not this syrupy, honeyed definition, but it's the belief that the work that we're putting in, the mistakes that we make and learn from, can be used for us creating this better possible future. Whatever
Right.
it looks like you said, it will get better. And that's what, people can sign up for. One of the things I remember, this was only a couple of years ago, when I was in an organization and we were trying to find out, like, what was the secret sauce? We were working on the employee value proposition. Like, why do people come here? What's the give and the get?
Mm-hmm.
And I said something, and I remember the interviewer kind of looking at me like, ooh. I said, if you like the idea of tough, hard, messy, can figure it out, have people that'll be in it with you, team driven, this is a place for you. If you want easy, don't come here. I just wanted to lay it out because I do think that people have had experiences that they're trying to repeat.
Yeah.
And maybe if you've been an expert, and you talk to us about this a lot, I remember in a lot of the leadership training, you kind of get in this space where you're like, oh, I know how this goes. Well, if you're coming to an organization where things are, and this happened everywhere, where things are changing, you are not going to be able to come in with that level of comfort. But if you're game for disruption, knowing that, to your point, having some hope, change can work for you, not just against you, then you might be in for a very good ride.
Right, that's right.
And so that actually was a secret sauce that we hadn't codified it. But I was like, that could be interesting, especially if someone is thinking one way about this industry. It can allow them to think about, they can be an architect, right? They can build something different.
All right. So, Cindy, to take us full circle, that is right back to what I said at the very beginning about what it takes to get out of your comfort zone. So that much change, that much disruption, that much I don't know. Maybe my experience is relevant. Maybe it isn't relevant. That kind of out of the comfort zone moment. It only works not when you think about the 7,000 things you could do, but you get focused on the handful of ones that will have the biggest impact on your team and your organization. Until you get focused on that, then you're scattered all over the board and frantic.
So we got to get focused. That's the secret sauce.
It's the focus. That's right. If you can't define how you're adding greatest value, then you don't have the wherewithal to do all the other things that we're talking about.
So, Wanda, for people listening to us and they're like, okay, that sounds great. How do I figure out where do I add the greatest value? What if what I thought I was doing was adding the greatest value until now, I now realize it is not adding the greatest value? What are things that I need to be doing to start to understand where the value could be? Who do I talk to? How do I bring the team in? Who else needs to be involved in this value creation?
Well, I recommend starting, and shout out to Richard Metcalf, because this is taken straight from him. The book is called Making Time for Strategy, but here's the idea. Look at what you're already currently doing and give me a rating scale of 1 to 5. How big is that impact, really, truly? Okay, and then what could you do to have greater impact? Do I need to put more time in? Do I need to stop doing it? Like just some evaluations around what you could do for your impact. All right, so you've got some thinking on your own. Now take it to your manager. Take it to your mentor. Take it to other key stakeholders. What would you like me to do? What do you think I need to be doing to add the greatest value to this team and to our group? And listen, bring that back, assimilate it, put it all together, get focused on it. And then ultimately you have to make up your own mind of all that you've heard. This is the leading part. Okay, what do I believe? Okay.
And then go do that.
Try it.
So, and it's interesting because we were having this conversation again at HBS about the importance of crowdsourcing insights, get kind of understanding, doing gut checks. It's hard, some stakeholder feedback, right? Things that you think are great. People might be like, I don't actually know why we're doing that, right?
Yeah.
Get outside the building. Get outside the building, because sometimes in organizations we can be very insular.
Yes.
And we know our stuff, but we actually don't know what's on the horizon, what's coming up. And as you said, as you pull all of those things together, you have to make the decision. That actually could be interesting. Now, if you're scared because you don't know how it's going to go, you still have to move forward.
Right.
And then you adjust. I think the powerful part is pulling the team in. Pulling the team in, because I remember, so one of the things that we were doing is doing a lot of work with an organization that gives recognition around workplace cultures that are, purpose-driven, high-trust organizations. And while we were getting all the awards, people didn't know why.
Yeah.
So the value creation then started to shift from campaign communication, balloons, confetti, to data. What are we learning? What benchmarking? How are we doing against our competitors? Where are we leading? And where are some challenging areas? And maybe choose 1 or 2 things that within region we can start to make changes. Right. And so we started talking to regional leadership. We started talking to CEO, executive leadership team. Here's what we're seeing. That added value more than we ever thought. And what it did differently, it wasn't just the data, it was the insights.
It's the insights, of course.
It's the insights. What are people saying? What does this actually mean? And then working with the team on, so what will you do differently now that you know this information? But it took time, to your point. It wasn't like a flash, like, oh, aha, I have it now. It took really trying to understand where the value is. And I think that's going to be a constant thing, where the value is and where I can't leave this alone, where are the opportunities.
That's right.
Because you have to be bringing in opportunities to have growth in your organization. So as we close out, Wanda, any last words or something that you want to leave us with to think about? How do we get out of our comfort zone.
Oh,
How
I
do
could
we
talk all
lead?
day about getting out of the comfort zone.
Whatever you want to leave
right.
us with. What would you like to leave us with?
I want to leave you with one more thing, because that's just what I say to every single person. And the higher in the organization you go, the more important it is.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? If you can't keep yourself on an even keel, then you have no capacity to listen, to ask questions, to care, to do any of the things that we're talking about. And in fact, it's worse than that, because you're edgy, impatient, and it's going to send all the wrong signals to the people that you're working with. It is absolutely mandatory that you figure out how to keep yourself on an even keel. Okay, now granted, there'll be days that I'm not feeling very good about that day for a host of reasons. I got to bring myself back next day to an even keel. And you've got to figure out what that pattern is for you and how you're going to do it. And it's not about working, 30 hours a week. It's about what you do with the hours that you do have. And it's just essential.
It is. It's, it reminds me of a quote from Dr. Susan David, who wrote the book Emotional Agility. And she says emotions are data, not directions.
Yes.
So if you're like letting your emotions guide you, you're probably all over the place. Yeah, people want to be led. It's okay to be passionate and all, and committed. But think about when you're in the presence of people who bring a sense of calm, where you're figuring, you feel like, we may not know the answer, but we can figure this out.
Yeah.
Versus being in the presence of someone who you're just like, okay, are we both about to go to the ICU?
How fast can I get out of here?
Yeah. Either you're going to have the stroke or I'm going to have it. Like, what is going on here, right? So I think that's something that is so insightful. And I remember, this was years ago, there was an article about the importance of managing energy.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a part of leadership. That's a part of management. How well are you managing your energy? How well are you managing yourself? Because you can't lead. And that's been the thing for me with talking about change is sometimes we've talked about change and the change curve, and we talk about other people. But one of the things that I really wanted to address and talk more about as we go through, have our different, our guest on, our contributing experts on, is to talk about how we as people leaders manage the change ourselves, because we may be fearful, we may be angry, we may be disoriented, but how can we lead someone to adapt if we don't understand how to manage where we are and how change is impacting us? So we're at the center of it, and we have to learn how to manage it better.
Well said. Cindy, we could be talking forever.
Thanks, Wanda.
It's a pleasure.
We won't build our best workplaces without changing the way we lead. Now, I want to share my final thoughts on how to do that. Why is leadership a megaSHIFT? Leadership is a megaSHIFT because the way we've been leading will not work for where we are today. What got us here won't get us into the future. We have to change the way we think about leadership, the way we see ourselves as leaders. What are our attitudes, our behaviors around leadership, even our habits, how we lead? All of that must shift for us to lead for the future. What do leaders need to unlearn or reframe? I think it's important for leaders to think differently about leading. Leading actually requires followership. And I think sometimes we get confused about what positional power and authority affords us when we have certain titles, access to resource, the ability to hire people on teams. I think it makes us think, we're in charge here, right? But actually, leadership is participatory. It can be distributed, which means more than one person can lead. And leaders have to reframe this idea of only having one person in the front seat. You cannot lead without a team. You cannot lead without followers. It really means that people believe in you, they believe in the vision that you're setting, and they want to put their skills, talents, abilities, and experiences along with a shared vision to move towards a shared goal. That is what leadership is about, and that's the major reframe, or what I like to say, the shift we have to make. What small yet impactful action can you take within the next 24 hours as you shift forward? Okay, here's a suggestion. You can either do this in a one-on-one with individual team members, or you can do this as a collective group, or you can do both. And the question that I want to provide for you is this: what can I do that is within my power to make things better for you? I then want you to take a deep breath and listen. And then I would like for you to say, tell me more. Ask, tell me more. Keep saying, tell me more until you feel as if you've heard everything. And then I want you to end with, is there anything else? Tell me how that works for you. Thanks for tuning into the show. We have a lot more ground to cover in upcoming episodes, so make sure you subscribe, follow, and share.